I've owned a Savannah monitor for quite some time now, so this is my Savannah monitor pet review. What is it actually like owning a Savannah monitor? Now we're going to cover this on 6 different topics. We're going to cover the species, the time, the experience, the upfront costs, the ongoing costs, and we've got a load of strange advice for you as well. We're always uploading videos on Savannah monitors, so if Savannah monitors are your interest, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. So we'll start with the species. The Savannah monitor itself is a sub-Saharan African species. It's a very actively sun-basking species, so it's always out, it's always moving, it's always running around the land trying to find its next meal. They are a very food-driven animal, and they will find any little piece of food anywhere. They're primarily an insectivore, which means they live off insects, millipedes. They might even take the occasional scorpion here and there in the wild. They live in burrows through the night, so they'll take over other animals' burrows, and that's where they will live. They are a very interesting, very powerful species. Their defense mechanism is they like to whip their tail, so if anything comes anywhere near you, they have a really powerful back end of their body and they can whip that tail and really cause some quite serious damage with that tail. They also have an incredibly strong bite on them as well. They do similar to what a crocodile would do, where they can lock onto you and then they can twist. Now this all sounds drastic and but it's really not. It doesn't happen that often. When you first get your Savannah monitor, they are likely to whip you, they are likely to nip you, but they're not going to cause you massive damage at that sort of age. Even when they're fully grown, they're still not going to cause a hospital visit, so to speak. But then that pushes us over to captivity. Savannah monitors in captivity. Now quite often, very recently, the majority of the Savannah monitors that were in the trade were all wild caught or wild farmed. Wild farmed is where they get the two parents, the male and the female, put them into a farm and basically let them breed in that farm. Then the farmer will go out, pick up those eggs and either incubate them in captivity in an incubator or leave them there and collect the babies when they do hatch. So they're not actually captive animals. They don't know how to live in captivity. Keeping them in captivity is just like a prison sentence for them. However, captive bred is becoming more and more popular now. I think the reason it's taken so long to get captive bred into the actual trade is quite simply because they don't hold they're not massively valuable animals. They don't hold that value really well. So there's no real point in somebody spending loads of money on loads of different enclosures to be able to breed them when they're not going to get the financial return. So that's probably why it's taken so long to actually get captive bred Savannah monitors in captivity. But because they've not been that popular in the hobby for that long, there's not too much information and knowledge about Savannah monitors. There's a fair bit out there, there's a fair bit of incorrect information out there. The amount of videos I see on YouTube of live feeding Savannah monitors rodents. They don't eat rodents in the wild. They may take over a rodent's burrow and the mum and dad rodent will scurry out and they'll have a good meal on the babies, but that's about it. Fur impaction is a problem with captivity for these animals, along with a few other diseases and common illnesses that these can get. Fatty liver disease, that's a big one, massively common in Savannah monitors in captivity. And again, that's because people don't know too much about them. They need a huge enclosure. Like I've already stated, in the wild, they're running around all day, they're burning the calories, they've got their blood heart rates up, and they're just really burning a load of calories. But they're living off an insect diet mainly. So they haven't got fat around their liver. In captivity, a lot of people keep them in small enclosures, don't give them the opportunity to exercise too much, and they feed them on fatty rodents. So that's how they get fatty liver disease. It does shorten their lifespan, makes life really uncomfortable for them. You sometimes see people they've got their Savannah monitor and it's this big, and then in a year it's 4 or 5 foot long. Hugo here, he's 3 foot long, he's nearly 3 years old. Have you ever had a week where you're living off McDonald's and KFC and takeaways and you feel really fat and sluggish and bloated? Well, that's what it feels like in the early stages of fatty liver disease. It then progressively gets worse to more pain rather than uncomfortable. Don't feed your Savannah monitors rodents all the time. Very rarely, I mean once a month he might get a couple of rat pups, furless rat pups. That's about it, and he is the healthiest one I've seen on YouTube. They're a slow growing species if kept correctly. Another common illness, metabolic bone disease, and again this is because everyone states you need to have an 8x4x4 enclosure. I'm not being funny, if you've got 4-foot enclosure and you stick your UVB lamp or your UVI lamp right at the top, that animal's not going to see any UVI at all. So they are going to get metabolic bone disease. That is a common illness with these, simply because people don't understand the knowledge behind ultraviolet index. Ultraviolet index is the figure that's measurable from the sun. So you can go out to Ghana, where these come from, stick your solar meter there, boop, it comes up with a number. I bet you 9 times out of 10 your Savannah monitor doesn't have the correct ultraviolet light that it would naturally see in the wild in your captive enclosure. And that's because there's not too much info on ultraviolet index or infrared or anything like that. Thankfully, we've got Reptile systems now, and they're really pushing UVI over UVB. So the ultraviolet index is a measurable figure. They've got their new Ferguson zone range. I'll leave a video linked just there about it all. That's pretty much it now for the species. Let's move over to the time, because Savannah monitors take a lot of time in various different ways. Not only are you going to have to spend an absolute load of time at work doing loads of overtime to be able to afford to keep one of these, but you're also going to have to give them a lot of time, a lot of attention to be able to tame them down. Because Savannah monitors, although people say they can't be tamed, a Savannah monitor can be made your friend. You can make friends with him, he can make friends with you. It just takes a lot of time. It took 18 months for him to stop whipping me. It takes a long time. They're a very, very intelligent animal, because most Savannah monitors these days are sort of F2, F3, which is the second and third generation away from a wild caught animal. They've still got a lot of natural tendencies, a lot of natural behaviours coming through. So it does take a while for them to tame down, to stop whipping you, to stop actively looking at you like your food. Every time I still open the enclosure now, he still thinks it's feeding time, and he'll come running up to you like, "Is it feeding time, Daddy? Is it feeding time?" So, and then taking that sort of food aggression away from him and realising that I'm not a threat, I'm not going to hurt him, I'm not food, I'm not always going to feed him. They are an intelligent lizard, but it just takes a lot of time to build that trust up, to build that knowledge between you both. Now, you do see a lot of information online, so we're going to move on to what my personal experience is with Hugo, my Savannah monitor. They are an extremely active lizard. He's always moving around all the time. He's always up at the glass. When he comes up at the glass, I open the door, let him out a bit. Obviously, make sure the heat in this room is actually risen quite a bit, but they require quite a high humidity as well, so I don't like to have him out too long, just to help with his breathing. I don't want him to get any respiratory issues or anything like that. In his enclosure, it's a perfect humidity and heat and everything like that. So he is extremely active. He does stay in there a fair bit, but he does come out to get that extra exercise. They are extremely food driven. Again, like I've just mentioned, it does take a while to drain that sort of mentality that every time you open the enclosure, there's food going to be there. It takes a while to get rid of that mentality out of them, but it does work eventually. Hugo here, he is handleable now. Boy, can they eat a lot. No, I said they can eat a lot. A Savannah monitor will never tell you when he's full. He'll just keep eating and eating and eating, because, again, that's their wild, natural behaviours. They're constantly running around trying to find food. If they come across food, it's, wow, I'm going to have that. They're building up their fat reserves, ready for the rainy season brumation for them. They want to have that fat reserve inside them to be able to keep them going through the rainy season. So, yes, they can eat an awful lot, and they will not tell you when they're full. You have to be very specific in what you feed him. I will never wait for him to tell me when he's had enough. I will set a set amount and I will feed him. How do you know if you're feeding enough? How do you know if you're not feeding enough? And etc, etc. Weigh your Savannah monitor weekly. That is the best advice ever. That way, if he does go off his food and you're thinking, hold on a second, it's coming close to winter, is it brumation, is it illness? Just keep weighing him. If he's not losing weight, then you know he's not really ill. If he is losing a bit of weight and he's still running around dead active and stuff, up the food a little bit. If he's putting on too much weight too quickly, drop the amount you feed him a little bit. Now, I'm not talking drop it down to 3 times a week or 2, just drop the sheer amount you feed him down. Another little life hack for you, with a big lizard comes big costs. Let's go over to the upfront costs first. Now, a lot of information you'll get online says you've got to start with a big 8x4x4 sort of enclosure, and that's going to last them a lifetime. No, I didn't do that. I started off in a 4x2x2. That was enough for him for 3 months. That was it. He grew out of that one very quickly. Then he got upgraded to this one, which is 6 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. This is now coming to the point where it's too small for him. He's too active and getting too big for this enclosure. That's where we're going to be building up a big, massive enclosure. I've not quite worked out the dimensions that it's going to be yet. I'm possibly just going to go with an 8x4x4, to be totally honest with you. That's about it for him. So you've got to make sure you've got the money spare for a Savannah monitor. So you've not only got your animal, you could pick up a captive bred Savannah monitor for around about £80, which is around about $110 there or thereabouts. They're not a very expensive animal at all. However, the enclosure, you could spend anywhere from £120 all the way up to £1,000 for an enclosure for a Savannah monitor. Have you got that money lying around to be able to upgrade him when he needs it? Then we move over to the basking bulbs just there. They're around £35 each. They're Reptile Systems D3 basking bulbs. All these products will be linked down in the description down below if you fancy checking them out. But they're the 100 watt D3 basking bulbs. They give off a good UVI, so that's UVB, UVA, infrared. Everything comes off those bulbs to create an amazing hotspot. But you don't just need one bulb, because one bulb will only heat up that one area. It might be this area, but that animal is this big, so it can't bask his entire body. So at the minute, 6 foot enclosure at his size, he only really requires 2, and that gives him the perfect temperature, the perfect ultraviolet index on that basking spot, and it does him just now. When he does get his upgrade in the coming weeks, he is going to have 3. Then the next cost is substrate. You need a lot of substrate. He's got around about 1.5 tons of substrate in there. I physically had to pay for a structural engineer to come round here and see if this floor was strong enough to withstand the weight of this whole enclosure. But then we've also got a load of natural rock. There are money saving costs. We've got the natural rock in there that we did get off a mountain. We've got live plants, because the live plants take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. Absolutely vital for him. Nice water source in the back corner, and he's got a nice burrow down this end with a cracking little basking spot. The upfront costs can be catastrophically expensive. Make sure you can afford it. If you can't afford it, don't scrimp. Don't scrimp. Get yourself a good basking setup, a good UV light setup. Get yourself a nice deep substrate. Make sure he's got everything he needs, and make sure you can afford to give him everything he needs. But then you've got the ongoing cost. What does it actually cost throughout the years? Now for me, the actual live food for him, again, I use insects mainly. So I've got me dubia roaches, me locusts, me crickets, me mealworms, superworms. I breed all my own live food, so that doesn't cost me anything for me. If you wanted to learn how to actually breed your own live food, I have got a playlist on this platform. I'll link you to it right there. There's bound to be something you're going to be interested in. These bulbs, like I've said, 35 quid each. They last around about 9 to sort of 12 months, and I have to pick up more then. Same again for his UVI lamp just up there. It lasts about 9 months, then I replace it. But that is pretty much it. It doesn't really cost me personally that much to sustain a Savannah monitor. I do need enclosure upgrades. That is going to cost me best part £500. Other than that, it doesn't really cost anything. It's enclosure upgrades. You have to take that into consideration throughout the years. But as a day-by-day sort of cost, it doesn't really cost me that much. But that's because I breed my own live food. With some strange advice, we'll move on to the strange advice. This is the sort of latter part of the video. Don't really do too much on Facebook, because I've noticed the Savannah monitor sort of Facebook community are just like the bearded dragon community, where they try and find a problem. You put a nice little picture of, oh, look at my cute Savannah monitor. You didn't ask any questions or anything, but they start coming at you. What's your temperatures? What are you using to heat it? They're trying to find a reason to have a go at you. So just take that into consideration. What you hear off all the Facebook groups and stuff, just take it with a pinch of salt. Don't take it to heart too much. When you're doing your research on these animals to do with their care or anything like that, make sure you pick up the most modern information sort of within the last couple of years, because there's always new information coming out about this, scientific information, technologically advanced information. Because these haven't been in captivity for too long, the information's not quite caught up to what it would be if it was a bearded dragon, so to speak. So just make sure you're doing your research on the most modern, up-to-date information. If you want to learn how to care for a Savannah monitor, I've done a video myself. I'll link that video just up there. But other than that, that's basically it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.